It's the usual time, ladies and gentlemen, 6 o'clock in London, 7 p.m. across the continent of Europe, 1 p.m. in New York, 1 a.m. in Hong Kong, 3 a.m. in Sydney, 10 a.m. in San Francisco, and 10:30 at night in Mumbai. Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world today. My name is Patrick L. Young, the IPO-VID Livestream. Series 18, episode 2 in the aggregate, that's episode 104, starts here. Let's open with a few mentions of what's been happening in the week in financial markets and exchanges. Exciting news in private markets as NPM, that's the Nasdaq private market, is seeking to reduce settlement times for transactions from the prevailing T plus forever norms of private equity and venture capital. That's something like 90 to 120 days if you're lucky, all the way down to 10 days. Meanwhile, at Euronext, they're not so much worried about settlement times, they're worried about listings walking out the door, particularly in the US from Ireland. The Irish version of The Times, that's not the Irish Times, but The Times, Irish edition, they've said that there could be a cost to Ireland of 250 million euros in lost taxes due to the company's listings being moved from Ireland to the USA. Those are, of course, worries in Dublin about the status of the Irish Stock Exchange as listings are heading to the US thanks to the recent Biden infrastructure bill. At least the good news is that Kingspan is staying listed on Euronext Dublin, although it's going to be leaving the London Stock Exchange. Deutsche Börse, meanwhile, they made a 3.9 billion euro bid for SimCorp. That's the bid of the week. Deutsche Börse creating a somewhat asynchronous subscription service. DB1 now establishing a separate conflict of interest silo based around their controversial purchase of a year or two ago of the ISS. So that's a $4.3 billion bid for SimCorp. No bids in Thailand, but nonetheless exciting technology news. The Stock Exchange of Thailand and the Thai Futures Exchange, TFEX, are implementing their new Nasdaq securities trading and derivatives trading system coming on the 8th of May. Just 6 more sleeps to go. And finally, for our intros today, a date for your diary, ladies and gentlemen. The AFM, the Association of Futures Markets, they're going to be returning to Budapest. And the AFM annual conference is back in Budapest 25 years on from its original foundation as an association in the capital of Hungary. And they're going to be celebrating the derivatives industry and the futures market. See you June 6th, June 7th. And I'm looking forward to giving a keynote presentation at that event. AFM, 25 years on, emerging markets, 25 years forward. Join us for that Silver Jubilee in Budapest. Now, someone for whom the number 25 has just been surpassed by the number of his books, because he's just reached, I do believe, 26 books in publication, is historian and sociologist Dr. Rainer Zitelmann. He's going to be our guest today. He's a serial best-selling author, and his books, including the latest, In Defence of Capitalism, to which we've appended the moniker and title for today's show, have been translated into no fewer than 30 languages around the world. Rainer's opinion pieces have been appearing worldwide in the likes of Forbes, Newsweek, the Daily Telegraph, the Times, Le Monde, Corriere della Sera, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, and the Neue Zürcher Zeitung, as well as publications across South America and Asia. Rainer runs a unique index on the image of rich people, having spent a great deal of time analyzing the personality traits of the rich. So, good evening, good afternoon. Rainer, where in the world are you today?
First one, to pronounce all the names of these international newspapers correctly. Sometimes it's funny when I'm in the United States and they have to pronounce like Corriere della Sera or Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, but compliment, you pronounced all of them correctly.
Thank you. So tell us, where in the world are you today, Rainer?
Yes,
it's lovely to see you.
I'm in Berlin. Yesterday,
in Berlin.
I came back from Tbilisi. I had a lecture there and met a lot of migrants from Russia, libertarians, very interesting. The days before, I've been in Romania. Next week, I go to Italy, and then I'll head to South Korea and Mongolia. So traveling a lot. but now I'm in Berlin.
That is quite incredible. Thank you so much for fitting us into your busy schedule. So tell us a little bit. I mean, when you were in Romania in the last couple of days, and you're also in Tbilisi in Georgia, what was that like? I mean, what's the attitude towards capitalism on the ground amongst the people you were meeting?
I commissioned a poll now in 34 different countries, what people think about capitalism. I did it for my book, In Defence of Capitalism. And it was not only one question, do you like capitalism or not? But we confronted our respondents with 34 different questions. We wanted to find out what they think about capitalism, and we had some questions without using the word capitalism, because in most of the countries, capitalism, the word has a negative connotation. And so first we asked them some questions about the market economy. And yes, then after this, so I have some information before I go to this country, but of course, to understand it better, it's interesting to speak with people. For example, in Russia, people have a very, very negative attitude toward market economy and capitalism. And the contrast is Poland, for example. From all these 34 countries, people in Poland had the most positive attitude towards capitalism and free market.
It's very interesting, the attitude from Poland, because one of the things that a lot of people would think is that the Polish economy has prospered as a result of huge amounts of European Union grant money. But I have to say, my experience as a Polish property owner is quite the opposite. I think you're right. I think Polish entrepreneurism is alive and dynamic beyond belief, in fact.
Yes, I believe so. It's not, even after Second World War, the growth of the German economy, it was not the support from the United States. In a way, it was important, but much more important was that we had Ludwig Erhard at this time with his, and he introduced market economy. And for Poland, the most important thing was that they had a great economist and finance minister, Balcerowicz. I met him in person, and he introduced this. He believed in economists like Ludwig van Mises and Hayek, and he introduced free market economy in Poland. And this was the most important reason. And as you mentioned, since 25 years, Poland is Europe's economic growth champion. Standard of living increased. But the problem is now in Poland that they go, since a couple of years, back to more state. With this ruling Peace Party there, they stopped privatization, even they nationalized some banks, more redistribution. So I hope that that people in Poland will understand what is the reason why they were so successful in the last 30 years. It was not because of the state, but in spite of the state. But with this Peace Party, we in Europe, we think that it's a kind of very conservative or right-wing party. Maybe it's correct if you think about values as family or nation, but in their economic policy, there are more left-wing and socialist, as I mentioned.
Yeah, you're quite right. I mean, the PIS, very socially conservative, but essentially a mainstream socialist party, a very interventionist party. It's great to hear you mentioning Leszek Balcerowicz, someone I've been trying to get onto this show. He's actually from originally the same city in Poland as my wife, where we have some property. An incredible man. And I think one of the things which is interesting to compare and contrast is how the east of Germany had effectively unlimited funds, or so it seemed, from the German government, which established itself in Berlin, where you are today, after being in Bonn, or at least the West German side in Bonn. And at the same time, Poland was relatively limited for capital. Yet now what we see is that actually quite often on the eastern side of the Polish-German border, it's more prosperous. I think the lovely statistic was that Stettin, as Winston Churchill would have referred to it in that great Iron Curtain speech, Stettin had a Starbucks, if that's a marker of these sorts of things, and at the same time, you couldn't find one for 150 kilometers around in the eastern part of Germany.
Yes, absolutely. You're correct. And another result of our poll was that still today, people in East Germany, they are more critical to capitalism. They are more anti-capitalist even than in West Germany. And there are a lot of people in East Germany, of course, not all, who think that socialism was a great idea, only not implemented in the right way. What is nonsense, of course. And I think it's a question of mindset. A lot of people in East Germany, they blame capitalism, or some of them have an inferiority complex against people from West Germany. So I think Poland is a great example. And if you compare it with East Germany, that the most important thing is the attitude and the mindset of the people in a country, because government can implement socialism, but government can't implement capitalism. Capitalism is something that is like a grassroots movement. I studied a lot about the history of China and Vietnam, and even before the economic reforms in China in the beginning of the 80s and in Vietnam at the end of the 80s, even before they started, there was a big movement, a grassroots movement from peasants and people everywhere in the country who started with their entrepreneurial activities. So this is the huge difference between socialism and capitalism. You can't force people to be capitalists.
You can't force people to be capitalists. That's a very interesting point. I suppose at that stage, Rainer, I should say hello to a couple of our regular viewers who have not been forced to watch this show, but have come of their own free will. Good evening, Peter Sekon. It's lovely to see you again. I hope Ari is very, very well. Hello as well to John T. Good evening, all. Great to be able to join you today for another fascinating insight. Indeed, John, it's great altogether to have Dr. Rainer Zitelmann here to manage to talk to us. Very, very interesting start to the show. We've been going our way through Poland and Germany. So I think you've given us a hint from your place of living in Berlin why you felt it was important to defend capitalism in your latest book, Rainer. But perhaps you could run through and explain to us, because you go through a series of 10 narratives to discuss just how capitalism is beneficial.
Yes, first of all, why did I write the book? Because I think capitalism is under attack everywhere, almost everywhere in the world today. Let's start with Latin America. You see, even in Chile, what was the most capitalist and successful country in Latin America, even they voted for a socialist. And now most of the countries in Latin America are governed by socialists, not to speak about Venezuela or now also in Brazil. So this is Latin America. And in the United States, if you look at this Index of Economic Freedom, it's published every year by the Heritage Foundation in the United States. This last year, the United States had the worst ranking since they started their Index of Economic Freedom. Today, there are even 16 European countries, according to that index, that are more economically free, more capitalist at the United States. So you have, especially with this Joe Biden now, more and more government intervention in the economy. And if you look to Europe, I can speak about Germany. It's a total disaster what happens right here. First, the government restructured our energy policy to a kind of planned economy. First, they phased out nuclear power plants. What I think it's a crazy idea. If you are concerned about climate change, then they started to phase out coal power plants. They forbid fracking, Now they import LNG fracking gas from the United States, and they import dirty electricity from other countries based by coal power plants. And we have the highest electricity prices in Germany all over the world. And the result is that some companies from Germany, that they go now to other countries. Take, for example, BASF, what is the biggest chemical company in the world. With a part of their business, they go to China now. Others go to the United States. And this is not only happening in Germany, it's happening all over Europe. Some month ago, they forbid combustion engines from 2035 all over Europe, so that it will be not longer allowed to buy or produce combustion engines in Germany. And I think this is a big mistake because this is the important to understand the big difference between capitalism and planned economy is. In capitalism, entrepreneurs decide what to produce, how much to produce. In the end, of course, it's the consumer's choice, because consumers every day, they make that decision who's rich and who's not. Every time you use Google, you make Larry Page and Sergey Brin rich. Every time you use Amazon, you make Jeff Bezos rich. And if you buy a Tesla, you make Elon Musk rich. So this is capitalism for me. It's pure democracy in the economy, because consumers decide. In a planned economy, politicians and government officials decide what is produced. And this is exactly what happens now in the United States and what happens now in Europe. And if you look in Asia, the last thing too, it's a very important development. China had an amazing economic development. Of course, everyone knows this over the last decades. Amazing. In the end of the 50s, 45 million people in China died as a result of the biggest socialist experiment in history. This was Mao Zedong's so-called Great Leap Forward. And even 1981, 88% of people in China lived in extreme poverty. 88%. Today, it's less than 1%. Why did this happen? Because Deng Xiaoping, in the beginning of the 80s, he introduced private property and implemented more pro-market reforms. But the problem now in China is that since a couple of years, they go back in the wrong direction, less market, more state. So you can see it everywhere in the world. And this is exactly the reason why first I wrote this book and published this book in defense of capitalism, because there are not many people who defend capitalism, especially not with the intellectuals. Most of the intellectuals, they are anti-capitalist. And so this is the reason why I wrote this book.
I think it's a fascinating book. It's a total must read, and it is a wonderful source of ammunition for those of us who believe in free markets. We're here talking about In Defense of Free Markets, In Defense of Capitalism, with Dr. Rainer Zitelmann from Berlin this evening. In Defense of Capitalism, debunking the myths. There are 10 chapters in this book that deal with different issues that are common tropes about which people use in order to decry the abilities of the free market to deliver prosperity. It is absolutely gripping. And it's the 26th such book that Rainer has written. So Rainer, do please tell us, let's go back a step, because you used to be a university lecturer, you were involved in journalism, you became an entrepreneur. What drove you to write books?
Maybe it's in my family. My father is also an author. And I like to write. I like it to write books. And maybe, my father, his first profession, he's a priest. And maybe I'm a little bit something similar. A priest my books are about two topics. The first topic is personal success, financial freedom, how to reach bigger goals. I have a very successful book, Dare to be Different and Grow Rich, The Secrets of Self-Made People, or another book about the wealth elite psychology of the super rich. And I like to help other people because I became rich as an entrepreneur, and I think much more people could be successful in life. And for me, it's really great when I meet people who speak to me, for example, on the street, and I get emails. I read your book, and this changed my life. I became so successful. You can't earn much money with writing books, but this is the real what you get as an author. This feedback by the readers. And the other thing is my mission for capitalism, and the reason is very simple, because I think capitalism is the best system against poverty. In the last weeks, I read again these 2 volumes from written by Adam Smith, because in June it's his 300th birthday, and I will write a lot of articles for international media all over the world about Adam Smith. And so I took again his 2 books written by Adam Smith, and I read also, I think now 15 other books about his life, biographies. And the result is Adam Smith believed that the best against poverty is free market and not government, not the government. The interesting thing is what a lot of people don't know. You will not find much positive things in his books about wealthy people, about entrepreneurs. On the contrary, you find a lot of very critical, negative remarks about entrepreneurs. I think he's a little bit biased, like most intellectuals who don't like rich people so much, but you find a lot of very positive things about or was concerned about poverty. And I didn't know it before. When he died, his cousin, his heir, was very disappointed because he earned a lot of money during his life, but he got only much less than he expected. The reason was because during his life he gave almost all of his money to poor people without talking about it. So poverty was his main concern. But what he understood, and this is really why Adam Smith is so great, he understood that you can't fight poverty by government intervention. He was very skeptical about government intervention. And his theory was that free markets will be the best way to improve living conditions of what he called the working poor. And he was absolutely right. And this is the topic of the first chapter in my book, because anti-capitalists, they tell us capitalism is to blame for hunger and poverty. And it's totally nonsense, of course. In the time of Adam Smith, 90% of the worldwide population lived in extreme poverty. 90%. This was before the beginning of the capitalist age. And today it's less than 10%. Less than 10%. And half of the reduction happened over the last decades. So yep. I think Adam Smith was right that market economy is the best way to fight against poverty.
And it's interesting, as you say, when I was born a few years after you, but essentially nothing happened in the years between your birth and my birth. There were lots of poor people. There were all of those terrible poverties and crises, Biafra, endlessly. My whole childhood was constantly, someone was starving to death in Africa, and every 2 or 3 years we would hear about poverty in Asia, and all sorts of terrible things happen. And you look at what has happened in the last 25, 30 years, really since Thatcher and Reagan, And it's incredible, the collapse of genuine global poverty. I mean, you think about how many years it took to get people to $1 a day. And at that point in time, people thought it was impossible. And yet the number of people these days, we really do not hear in the same way as we did in the 1970s. That's not to say there are not problems, but it's not the same with mass billions of people starving to death. And equally, the ability of people to live longer and longer, because what held back Africa was the number of poor devils who were dying at birth. So it's very, very interesting. But let me just change the emphasis a moment, because I think you make a great case in defense of capitalism. But John T. has asked a very interesting question. Do you think, Rainer, that the apparent and potentially more visible possible corruption in capitalist countries between governments and business is turning people away from capitalism?
Yes, of course, corruption is a big problem. It was, by the way, even much bigger in socialist countries where corruption was everywhere. But of course, it's also a problem in capitalist countries. And the interesting thing is now, the more regulations you have, the more reason is there for corruption. So if you want to get rid of corruption, it's very easy. It's very easy. Deregulate, because every new regulation is a reason for some companies or wealthy people to try to bribe government officials. If there are not so many regulations, there's not so much reason for deregulation. I told you that I was this weekend in Georgia, and I spoke with one of the leading economists there, and he was involved in fighting corruption in Georgia. And what he told me was very interesting. Georgia was one of the most corrupt countries in Eastern Europe. And then they had a government who got rid of a lot of regulations. And the more they deregulated, the better became the rating from this Transparency International. Maybe you know they have an index of corruption perception all over the world. And of course, there are still corruption today, but deregulation was a very important thing. So if you are concerned about corruption, then you should deregulate, less government, and it's very easy.
Yes. Yes. Well, I hear you, because actually at one time I was involved with a private equity firm, and we held a number of assets, including in Georgia. At one stage, it owned Borjomi, the mineral water company, magnificent drink. And it was incredibly difficult, the corrupt state of Georgia. And in fact, I ran a stock exchange in Romania, which was the apotheosis of having to be corrupt for many ordinary people, because it was simply impossible to actually go through the bureaucracy, because there were cases where in order to do B, you had to have a stamped document A. But to have stamped document A, you need to have piece of paper 3. And piece of paper 3 only came if you had already got B. And these sorts of non sequiturs happened all the time. I once formed a company in Romania, and it was actually impossible to do it without effectively arguing with people and begging them to do something, or, as most people would do, bribe.
Yes, absolutely. It's Romania. Another example, I've been in Greece some months ago. It was the same thing, or it became a little bit better there in Greece, but it's still bad there. People have to bribe. I read something about someone, an entrepreneur who wanted to found a company, and I think he needed like 3,000 different permissions in Greece. 3,000 over years and years. And of course, then everything is very slow, and it becomes only getting faster if they bribe people. So it's a problem in a lot of countries. for example, in Germany, we have there are 25,000 different regulations if you want to build a house. 25,000. I think 100 would be enough. And this is bureaucracy. It's the real source of corruption all over the world. So to answer the question, yes, we need more capitalism. And the good news is there's, I mentioned before, this index of economic freedom. It's very interesting. I recommend to everyone to Google this. If you Google it on the internet, index of economic freedom, you can get it for free. It's 500 pages by the Heritage Foundation. And every year, it's a rating of how economically free are countries all over the world. The most economically free countries are like Switzerland and Ireland and Singapore, and at the bottom there are countries like Venezuela and North Korea or Cuba. And now the interesting thing about corruption. If you compare the index by Transparency International about corruption perception, and you compare it with this index of economic freedom, you can see as a rule that the more economically free countries are less corrupt than the countries that are repressed and not economically free. The same, by the way, is true for the environment. This is the topic of the third chapter in my book, In Defence of Capitalism. It's about climate change and environmental destruction. And if you compare this index of economic freedom by the Heritage Foundation with another index, this is the Environmental Performance Index by Yale University. You can get it also for free. This EPI, Environmental Performance Index. And I compared for my book both of this, and you see the same result. The more economically free countries have much better scores in the Environmental Performance Index than the repressed countries. So if anti-capitalists tell us, for example, they tell us today we should abolish capitalism to fight against climate change or against environmental destruction, this is absolutely nonsense. And I have some other facts there in my book. For example, you can compare East and West Germany. I like to compare both countries because the same country, the same people, the same history, the same language, only a different economic system. So it's a perfect experiment. And if you look then about environmental problems, CO2 emissions were 3 times higher in East Germany, adjusted to GDP, than in West Germany. And other air pollutants were even 10 times higher in East Germany than West Germany. By the way, I can recommend to all people to listen to us a film. I produced a film. You can get it for free on the internet. It's Life Behind the Berlin Wall. If you Google Life Behind the Berlin Wall, you find this film about East and West Germany, and I'm proud because I got an award as the Audience Choice Best Short Movie in the last Freedom Fest in Las Vegas last year. And it's a short movie, only 17 minutes, but it's a comparison between East and West Germany. And there were some funny things I asked people. Maybe I can ask you also. I asked people, what do you think? How long did you have to wait to get a car in socialist East Germany? What do you guess?
Oh, I'm going to guess it was about 8 years.
So it's, you're good, but in reality, it was between 12 and a half and 17 years to get a car. And if you waited so long, in the end, you got the worst car in the world, because East Germany was famous for building the worst cars in the world, very bad for the environment, very slow. And this was the so-called Trabant Trabi. But you had to wait between 12 and a half and 17 years. Or another fact that you can see in this film, or you have it in my book, in East Germany, even 1989, 26% of all people had to share their toilet with other people. So if you lived in a multi-family house, 26% didn't have their own toilet, but you had to go outside and share it with other people. At the same time, in West Germany, almost 100% had their own toilet or telephone. I don't speak about cell phone, I speak about landline. In 1989, only 16% of people in East Germany had their own telephone. 16. In Germany, it was West Germany 99%. So you find a lot of these facts. And by the way, this is what my book is about. It's without any theory. I'm not such good theorist. It's about facts. And the first review that was published about my book in Germany, he wrote, Zitelmann is a fanatic of facts. And this is true. And I didn't write the book to convince anti-capitalists. I had another interview some weeks ago, and the journalist asked me, do you believe that you can convince anti-capitalists with your book? And my answer was, no, I don't believe so. Then he asked, but why did you write this book if you don't believe that you can convince them? My answer was, I wrote it for pro-capitalists, people who like the market economy, to provide them with all the facts that you need to win every discussion with anti-capitalists. Because I believe anti-capitalists, of course, I would like that they read the book, but I have no illusion. They don't read books like this. They prefer to buy book number 35, Why Capitalism is Evil. I see it sometimes on the internet, when I post something about my book on Twitter, and then there are some left-leaning people who write, this book, this is totally shit, it's all wrong. And then I ask only one question. Have you read the book? Did you read the book? The answer, no, I never would read a book like this. And so I don't think that they will buy the book. So hopefully there are some people who listen to us now who are pro-capitalism. And if you should buy the book, because it will provide you with so many arguments and facts. It's a book with almost 900 footnotes, and the bibliography is with 360 scientific books and papers. But don't be afraid. It's easy to understand. If you can understand what I say now, it's even easier to read the book, but because it's without German accent. So then I guarantee you will understand the book, because the translation was made by a native speaker from London.
It's a very elegant book, and it is an excellent, genuine defense of capitalism. And in that respect, I thoroughly recommend you rush out and buy a copy, ladies and gentlemen, because it is full of the statistics that will help back up your arguments. And I have to say, the interesting thing about waiting 12 to 17 years for a Trabant, or perhaps you got really, really lucky and you might have got a Wartburg, that fabulous two-stroke engined car, just at a point in time when that was only in motorbikes in the rest of the world. I think the thing that's really intriguing about your German statistics are when you travel to somewhere like Poland or further east, they regarded East Germany as being the ultimate in the socialist lifestyle, because being on the front line with the West, actually East Germany was given more subsidy and more money from the central government within the USSR. There were transfer payments, etc., which actually gave the people a more privileged ability to have only 16% with a landline telephone.
Absolutely. I agree. Most of the people, I see you know a lot about history. Most people don't know this, but this is absolutely correct. I've been in Vietnam last year, and I spoke with people, and for them, East Germany was really the paradise, socialist East Germany. Because if you compare the situation in Vietnam with East Germany was amazing. And by the way, Vietnam is a very interesting example. a lot of people don't know much about Vietnam. I ask always people, what do you think, how many people live in Vietnam? And they, well, 20 million or something. No, it's 100 million. It's one of the biggest countries in the world. And it's an amazing country. What most people don't know, even in the 90s, Vietnam was the poorest country in the world, poorer than all African countries, the poorest country in the world. First, they had this terrible war, not only one war, they had more wars. The first with French, and they had war with almost everyone from their neighbors, and not only from their neighbors. But the last war, of course, with the United States, and after the war, they had this planned economy, and what was not destroyed by the war was destroyed by the planned economy. And people were so extreme poor in Vietnam, but people in Vietnam are very smart. They had this system only for 10 years, and then they say, okay, planned economy doesn't work. They started economic reforms. They call it the so-called Doi Moi reforms, introduced private property, pro-market reforms, and it's amazing what happened there in the last decades. If you look at this index of economic freedom that I mentioned several times, from the big countries, it's Poland and Vietnam who gained the most economic freedom. And I spoke with people there, and I've been there, and it's what happened there, it's amazing. And so you see, this is the power of capitalism. Of course, they call themselves socialist, and the leading party is the Communist Party, but I can guarantee you one thing. It's easier to find a Marxist in the United States or in Europe than even at the university in Vietnam. I was invited at 4 universities in Vietnam. For example, a foreign trade university, what is a great university, and they invited me to a workshop, and the topic of the workshop was, how can we improve the image of rich people in Vietnam? By the way, the image of rich people is much better in Vietnam than in most other countries. But the topic of the workshop was, how can we improve it even more? Can you imagine in a university social science department in the United States or in Europe, a workshop how to improve image of wealthy people? I was never invited to such a workshop, but they invited me in Vietnam.
That's quite incredible. And I mean, I note you repeatedly talking about your optimism about Poland. And in fact, we're getting messages through, I see, talking about, yes, people in Poland used to travel to the old DDR in order to buy what was real chocolate and coffee, because you couldn't even get it in Poland in the depths of communism. At the same time, you're super optimistic about Vietnam, a country, I must admit to my chagrin, I have not yet visited, and I look forward to going there to see its capitalism in action. I've read a lot about it in recent years, although...
May I ask you something?
Please.
Are you married?
I am married to a wonderful Polish lady, so that's why we're talking about the wonders of Poland and how I come to have invested in Poland with my wife, and we're super excited about the dynamism of the Polish economy. But I think the Vietnamese economy is incredible, and we also worry about.
Sorry,
yes, go ahead.
Poland and Vietnam, they have the most beautiful women there. You will see it if you go to Vietnam. Poland and Vietnam.
Well,
if you compare it with the United States, we can't compare it with the United States.
Mrs. Young may just be about to veto that trip to Vietnam as a result, but darling, you shouldn't feel jealous or be worried, because you are the chosen one. So there's no doubt whatsoever that Poland certainly has many of the most beautiful women in the world. I married one myself, beautiful in every possible respect. You mention, we're talking here in Defence of Capitalism with Dr. Rainer Zitelmann, and it's a fabulous discussion, Rainer. We could go in so many ways for so many different directions, but you just talked about this workshop on the image of the rich. You've written several books about the rich, how they get there, how they keep their wealth, perceptions of the rich. You have an index, I believe. Is that yes. Right?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Yes. I wrote another book. It's the title is The Rich in Public Opinion. But I also published some scientific papers. You can get them also for free in the journal, in an economic journal in the UK. And yes, I created, I commissioned a poll about the image of rich people. And we did it now in 13 different countries to find out more about the attitude towards the rich and especially about envy. I created something that I call the social envy coefficient. It's this, we asked dozens of different questions to our respondents, and some questions were indicators for envy, whether someone is envious or not. Some people think that envy can be something positive, like a motivation, but this is not envy. This is the wrong word. If you admire people and you see them as a role model, but envious people, they don't want to improve their own situation. They don't want to reduce the gap between themselves and the rich by improving their own situation, but they want to reduce the gap by tearing rich people down. For example, we had some questions like, I would favor drastically high taxes for millionaires, even if I have no personal advantage, or I would be in favor of reducing CEO compensations or manager salaries and spread it more evenly among the employees, even if everyone has only $2 more. Or another question was, or statement was, if I hear about a wealthy person, millionaire who lose a lot of money due to risky business, I think this serves him right, like Schadenfreude. So we had a lot of questions like this, and then we calculated the social envy coefficient. It's the we divided the percentage of envious and not envious people in countries, and the result was the most envious people are in France by far, followed by my country, unfortunately, Germany, and the least envious people were in countries like Poland, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam. These are the countries where you have a very positive attitude toward rich people and not so much social envy. And by the way, this book, The Rich in Public Opinion, it's not only about the survey, but it's some theory. Why are people envious, and what's the attitude toward the rich? Yes, there's the book. And I'm proud because this is the first and only book about stereotypes and prejudice against rich people. Of course, rich people are a minority, as other minorities. And you have a lot of books about prejudice against Black people, against disabled people, against Jewish people, against women, against gay people. So thousands of books. But there was no book about prejudice and stereotypes about rich people. And so what I did, I read a lot about this research about prejudice in general and stereotypes. And then I did the survey. And yes, this was one book. And another book was my second doctoral dissertation. I have this 2 PhDs, and the first one was in history, and the second one was in sociology. And this was about the psychology of the super rich. And this is published with the title, The Wealth Elite. And this was also very interesting for me because I wanted to find out whether there's a relation between personality traits on the one hand and financial success on the other hand. And I had interviews with 45 very rich people. Most of them had a net worth between 30 million and 1 billion euro. So it was not the super rich. It was not someone like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, but these were people with, most of them had some hundreds of millions, self-made people, entrepreneurs, investors. And I spoke with every one of them 2 hours, and everyone completed a psychological test, the so-called Big Five test. And maybe this is a topic for another interview.
I'd love to.
A lot of time, because I think this is interesting for your audience.
I think it would be great.
Psychology of rich people.
I think it would be super. I think you will call that a date, Rainer. If you want to join us, we would be delighted to see you. We're getting actually incredible feedback. I'm getting it even through my direct messages throughout the course of this show. So that's superb. So maybe when you, sometime in the future, when you're not traveling so much, you get back from Korea. I suppose I have to show a little K-pop love there to all our viewers in Korea who've got a visit from Rainer coming soon. What a magnificent and incredible and technological and advanced country. It's such a joy to visit at all times. So tell me, I mean, Rainer, what are you working on right now in between your busy travel schedule?
So 2 things. The next book that I'll publish in Germany in the next few weeks. You saw I spoke a lot about Poland and Vietnam, and I read a book. I wrote my next book. It's the rise of the dragon and the white eagle, how nations escape poverty. So in the first chapter, I show why development aid does not work. So it doesn't work. You see it in Africa. They got so much development aid, billions, and it didn't help. What helped is market economy. And I have these 2 examples from Poland and Vietnam in my book. I had some interviews there in Vietnam with people. And but I'm still looking for a publisher for this book. So if there's someone who's a publisher, maybe I still started to look for the best publisher for this book. It's you should contact me. And the other book that I write, the next book, will be, I have for now only a working title. The working title is Liberty Road Trip, because last year I mentioned I've been in 17 countries. This year it will be 30 countries. The next few months, I will not only go to South Korea and Mongolia, I will go to countries like Nigeria or Nepal or Pakistan. And of course, I go there to promote my books and have lectures, but I go also there to learn something about the economic situation. Before I go to these countries, I read a lot about the history, about the economy, and I have a role model for this book. Maybe, do you know Jim Rogers?
Yes, absolutely. I know Jim well. Yeah, we did in fact, the last time I was in South Korea, in Seoul, I spoke on a panel and was alongside Jim Rogers as one of the other keynotes. Good man, investment biker.
Yes, I can recommend his book, Investment Biker. He did something, of course, much more fascinating than what I'm doing now, because he was not in 30 countries, but in 120 countries with his motorbike in 3 years. And I met him in Singapore several times, where he lives now today, and last time met him last year in Las Vegas. And but I can recommend, it's a great book, Investment Bike, and he's 2 times in the Guinness Book of Records. The first time for driving with his motorcycle in 120 countries, and then with a car 2 years also in more than 100 countries. So I can't compare it with this, but I like the idea to go to different countries and think about economic freedom and about history. And then I read a lot about this, and then I speak there with the people. I do my research, and then I combine it with a book. But first, I have to finish this travel. I think this is a book that I will write next year. But the first thing that I do now at this moment, as I mentioned before, I read so much by and about Adam Smith. And if you Google my name on the internet, you can find a lot of articles. I publish it in different languages, of course in English and German, but also in France and in other languages. And you can find a lot of articles. And I like this, writing articles, writing my books, travel. It's fascinating to travel so much. But to be honest, I'm happy to travel now, but I'm happy also next year if I spend more time at home and in my own bed, because now I'm only like a few days also always here in Berlin, and then go back to all of the airports.
And yes, well, at least the good news is they finally, thanks to the central government, managed to deliver the new Berlin airport after only 10 years of delay. Another triumph of government in action. So look, Rainer, we're coming to the end of our show. It's been a fascinating discussion. We always ask the same question of all our guests. Where do you think the capital market revolution goes next?
I don't know so much about this. People speak a lot about artificial intelligence, and maybe it can help if you have so many stupid people to have some artificial intelligence, but I don't know.
Well, the possible rise of AI, that's an interesting possibility, I'm sure. And certainly there's a lot of discussion at the moment. People are using very short data sets to say that the humans are winning. I can't help but feel that perhaps when we get that data out to maybe 10 or 20 years, it might be a slightly different story. But at the moment, the humans are claiming that they're definitely in charge of the investment decisions. Dr. Rainer Zitelmann, it has been an absolute joy to have you on the show. This has been an epic discussion in Defence of Capitalism. Check out those books. You've got to read In Defence of Capitalism if you're a serious viewer of this show. 10 fabulous myths debunked beautifully, elegantly, and with a rich quantity of data at all points in time. As that interviewer said, Dr. Rainer Zitelmann is a fanatic for facts, and I cannot disagree with that. We're looking forward very much to your future appearance when we can talk about the rich and everything in relation to that, Rainer. Next week, we've got a social study of how to build a stock exchange with a Scottish University lecturer, Philip Roscoe. That's going to be same time, same place. It only remains for me, Patrick L. Young, to say, I suppose if nothing else, 6 words have been echoing through my mind this evening, and they were, of course, the most dangerous words in the English language, according to the great President Ronald Reagan. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we stand here in Defence of Capitalism. Thank you, John T. Thank you, Peter Second. Thank you to our production team, to Racy, Janella and Jamil, as well as Beata. What a marvellous show altogether. We're looking forward to next week, and we're looking forward to a return visit from Rainer Zitelmann. In the meantime, get that book, In Defence of Capitalism, and prepare for 25 other books that you're going to be reading soon. My name is Patrick L. Young. I wish you all a great week in blockchain, life, and marketing.